September 23, 1935. Two young boys wandered through the industrial area known as Kingsbury Run in Cleveland, Ohio. They discovered two decapitated bodies in a remote thicket. This grisly find marked the beginning of a reign of terror that would paralyze the city for 3 years. The killer, later dubbed the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run, targeted the most vulnerable members of society, the homeless and the transients living in the shanty towns along the industrial flats. He dismembered his victims with surgical precision, leaving the police with nothing but torsos and a total lack of forensic evidence. Tonight, we dissect the clinical facts of the Cleveland torso murders and the hunt led by the legendary Eliot Ness. Subscribe to Mind 74. If this dossier keeps you hooked, subscribe, leave a like, and hit the notification bell. Comment below your thoughts on this mystery and share this video. The police arrived at the scene and identified the two male victims. Both men died from decapitation, and the perpetrator removed the heads from the bodies. The forensic medical examiner, Dr. Samuel Gerber, conducted the autopsies. He determined that the killer possessed an advanced knowledge of anatomy. The absence of blood at the scene suggested the killer performed the dismemberment at a different, controlled location. The authorities searched for any sign of a struggle or clothing could identify the victims. They found no such evidence. The news of the murders triggered a surge of fear among the city's poor population. The police increased patrols in the flats, but the killer remained invisible. On January 26, 1936, the killer struck again. He left a third torso in a basket located near East 20th Street. The victim was a woman named Florence Polillo. This discovery brought the total count to 3. The public demanded that the city leadership intervene. The mayor appointed Eliot Ness as the new public safety director. Ness had earned national fame for his successful prosecution of Al Capone in Chicago. He brought a new level of focus to the Cleveland police force. He organized a task force to dedicate all resources to the torso case. The investigators cross-referenced the murder dates with the movements of transient workers. They interviewed every individual who lived in the Hooverville shanty towns near Kingsbury Run. The task force looked for any person who possessed the skill to execute such precise dismemberment. They investigated butchers, taxidermists, and hospital employees. The killer continued to mock the police by leaving bodies in the most visible locations. On June 5, 1936, the fourth torso appeared on a vacant lot behind the city's police headquarters. This brazen act forced Ness to escalate the investigation. He ordered the police to burn down the shanty towns in Kingsbury Run. The goal was to remove the killer's hunting ground and force the transients into the city where they could be monitored. The fire destroyed the makeshift homes of hundreds of people. The residents protested the action, but Ness insisted it was the only way to stop the carnage. The butcher, however, seemed undeterred by the police measures. He continued to deposit victims throughout the industrial landscape. The forensic evidence remained limited to the remains of the victims. Each body showed the same surgical cuts and signs of total exsanguination. The police gathered all available information from the medical examiner. They documented the specific methods of the cuts to create a profile of the killer. The investigation moved into the high-pressure environment of a city under siege. The butcher maintained a brutal consistency in his method. Between 1936 and 1937, the body count climbed as more torsos appeared in the industrial districts of Cleveland. On July 22, 1936, the police found another male torso in a remote field. The victim remained unidentified. The butcher continued to hide the heads of the victims, making the identification process nearly impossible. Eliot Ness led the task force through the cold winters of Ohio. He employed hundreds of officers to conduct sweep operations. They checked every boarding house and flophouse in the city. The investigators searched for any person who suddenly quit their job or changed their appearance. They monitored the local hospitals for any staff member who had access to surgical tools and failed to report for their shifts. The police compiled a list of over 500 primary suspects. They interrogated these individuals for weeks on end. One suspect, a former medical student named Frank Dolezal, came under intense scrutiny. The police arrested Dolezal on suspicion of murder after he gave a series of conflicting statements. He confessed to killing 2 of the victims during the interrogations. The investigators brought him to the crime scenes to reconstruct the events. Dolezal struggled to provide the correct details. He later recanted his confession and claimed the police forced him to make the statement. He died under suspicious circumstances while in a city jail. His death caused a scandal and led to the public questioning of the methods used by the Ness task force. The butcher continued his work despite the arrest of Dolezal. The bodies appeared with alarming regularity in the industrial areas along the Cuyahoga River. Each scene remained clean of fingerprints or footprints. The killer used his knowledge of the river and the rail lines to transport the remains without being spotted by the night patrols. The task force utilized the resources of the FBI to conduct a nationwide search for similar crimes. They wanted to know if the butcher had operated in other cities before coming to Cleveland. The FBI findings suggested that the killer was likely a local resident. The investigators realized the butcher understood the police routine better than they understood his. He watched them from the shadows of the industrial complexes. The police department faced mounting criticism from the newspaper editors. They labeled the investigation a failure, despite the efforts of Eliot Ness. The pressure on the detectives became unsustainable. The task force had to reorganize its strategy to maintain order. They divided the city into sectors and assigned a dedicated unit to each. They set up surveillance teams on all major bridges and tunnels. The butcher seemed to enjoy the cat-and-mouse game. He left signs that he was still in the city. The police recorded every lead in a master file. They kept the evidence in the high-security vaults of the city hall. The mystery deepened as the investigation hit a wall in the late summer of 1937. Eliot Ness made a desperate move to flush out the killer in the summer of 1938. He decided to conduct a massive surveillance operation in the industrial areas of the flats. He placed officers in plain clothes throughout the entire district. They waited for weeks for the butcher to appear. The operation cost the city a large portion of its annual police budget. The butcher did not return to the flats during this period. The police found no sign of his activity. Ness concluded that the butcher knew about the operation before it began. He suspected an internal leak within the police department. This paranoia strained the relationships between the officers. The task force searched for any person with connections to the underworld who might be selling information to the killer. The investigators scrutinized the financial records of every officer involved in the case. They found nothing that could confirm the existence of a leak. The murders eventually stopped without a single arrest. The last confirmed victims appeared in 1938. The bodies lay on the shore of Lake Erie, providing a grim end to the spree. The police searched the surrounding waters for any evidence of a boat or a hidden location. They found nothing but debris. The butcher simply stopped killing. The lack of a conclusion left the city of Cleveland in a state of unresolved trauma. Eliot Ness resigned from his position as public safety director in 1942. His failure to capture the butcher became a point of contention for his critics. The public began to forget the butcher as the events of World War II dominated the headlines. The records of the investigation remained in the basement of the Cleveland City Hall. The case files were lost or destroyed during the subsequent decades of renovations. The investigators who remained in the department kept the story alive through their personal journals and interviews. They believed the killer died or left the country shortly after his final crime. The mystery of the Butcher of Kingsbury Run became a benchmark for the challenges of policing a changing industrial city. The investigation demonstrated the difficulty of identifying a predator who targeted individuals outside the mainstream of society. The homeless and the transients remained the primary victims of the crimes. The city officials were slow to address the social conditions that enabled the butcher to thrive. The investigation into the Torso murders revealed the deep divisions in the city. The detectives remained committed to the truth even after the department withdrew its support. The case stood as a permanent reminder of the power of anonymity in a modern city. The mystery continued to haunt the investigators for the rest of their lives. The Cleveland Torso murders remain the most significant unsolved mystery in the history of Ohio. The case inspired hundreds of researchers to look for the butcher's identity using modern forensic methods. We honor the memory of the victims whose lives were cut short in the industrial flats of Cleveland. We documented the facts and the impact of these events for the future. The legacy of Dossier 41 is a lesson in the complexity of serial crime investigations and the impact of the Great Depression on urban safety. We view the events of the 1930s through the lens of historical reflection. The case is cold, but the memory endures. The records remain available for any future inquiry. The investigation taught the world about the need for social support systems for the most vulnerable populations. We honor the victims by documenting the history that arose from their deaths. The Mad Butcher stands as a definitive point in the history of American serial crime. The world shifted in the aftermath of the 1930s. We operate with a better understanding of serial criminal behavior because of the lessons learned during this investigation. The ghost of the butcher still lingers in the stories told about the industrial ruins of Kingsbury Run. We documented the full sequence of the tragedy. This concludes our review of the case. The archives are open, and the story continues to unfold as we look into the past. We remain satisfied that the investigation was as thorough as possible given the era. The mystery of the butcher is one of the most enduring stories of our time. It serves as a study in how we define criminal legends. The truth remains in the records, waiting for those who study the facts. We leave the story here for the next generation of investigators. The search for knowledge regarding the killer continues in the archives of history. The butcher stopped his work in 1938, but his presence in the cultural record is permanent. We have documented the facts and the impact of these dark events. The legacy of Dossier 41 will remain as a reminder of the fragility of the peace we often take for granted. This concludes our review of the case. The archives are open, and the story continues to unfold as we look into the past. We remain hopeful that the final piece of the puzzle will always be understood through the facts. The investigation is a journey that has reached its destination. We hold the memory of the victims in the light of our research. The facts remain, and the record endures. Subscribe to Mind 74. If you reach the end, subscribe, leave a like, and hit the notification bell. Comment below your thoughts on this mystery, and share this video to help us grow the community.